We're going to move on to homelessness now. Last month, the city auditor released a report saying Denver is spending more than it's reporting on homelessness. $3 million on enforcement, $8 million on outreach, and $2.5 million on cleanups for a total of about $13 million, a number that is likely much bigger. So we have a question for each of you. Kelly, with that audit number in mind, you've said the use of arrest would be an option as a last resort. Do you stand by that? And knowing that there is a shortage of Denver police and sheriffs, where will the resources to arrest people come from?
Yeah, really, it is a last resort. The priority, and I really have to emphasize what the auditor is focused on in his audit, is the cost of continually sweeping people and how ineffective that is. And so I'm proposing we actually stop doing that, and instead, with urgency, we get people to safe outdoor sites, indoor when we can, but safe outdoor sites. So we stop sweeping people and we actually start to save lives. In that process, if somebody refuses to go, or more importantly, isn't capable of making that decision for themselves, I have said I would take them to a place like Denver Cares that we have today. This is a facility for someone who's intoxicated or high and can't take care of themselves. And I would take people to those locations to take care of them through this process.
Okay, Joe has the next question for Mike.
Mike, your plan to address homelessness includes building micro-communities of tiny homes. How do you prioritize who gets first pick of those units?
Thanks for the question, Joe. And I'm glad to come back to this. I don't think arresting people who are homeless is the answer. I think the answer is getting people access to housing, that have the supportive services we know people need. Example is I was talking to a guy outside of a shelter a few weeks ago who had a construction hat in his bag and was saying that he's been working construction but ended up homeless again after 11 months of work because he had to choose between going to get a shift for construction at 5:30 in the morning or going to the methadone clinic where he's getting treatment to get off his addiction. And because he had to choose treatment, he missed the shift, couldn't pay the rent, was back on the street. That's not someone that needs to be arrested. That's someone that needs access to housing, needs access to services, needs access to support. What we know is that if we create this kind of housing, Joe, we know there's people who want to go there in overwhelming numbers. And so that's why we want to build this scale quickly. These tiny homes can be built quickly. We can convert hotels quickly. That allows us to move people to those sites that we know they overwhelmingly want to go. And so for me, that's how we solve it, and we can solve it with real speed.
Thank you. All right, here's Des with the next question.
You both have produced plans of addressing our unhoused community members. So this next question comes from the Sun Valley Community Coalition. What is your plan to address the need for affordable housing for low-income Denverites and missing middle that does not displace current residents? And Mike can go first.
I'm so glad that you raised this because this is what we're finding is there is a huge gap of affordable housing, not just for folks that are unhoused, but for people that are working full jobs, sometimes 2 full jobs, and still can't get access to housing. This is why it's so important to make sure we have housing that we can guarantee people is affordable and will stay affordable. So my proposal will build these 25,000 units or convert existing units to be permanently affordable so people can get access to them at any income level. If you're making $20,000 a year or $30,000 a year or $60,000 a year, we know we have families that are married couples making $80,000 a year that still can't afford to raise kids in this city. And this links your rent to what you're actually making. And so you don't have a scenario where someone's paying 50% of what they make to to rent. That's what's happening around the city right now. And that's what's making it possible for people to stay in this city. So for me, that priority is about meeting people at whatever income level they're at and making sure they can get access to housing that doesn't burden them and keep them from being able to pay for food for their kids or transportation or the rest of the medication or core services families need.
Kelly.
This is so key because I think we have to start thinking about housing as the continuum that it really is. So while I'll focus on hardworking families and how we make sure they stay, I'm going to tie it back to this is all part of how we also address unhoused in our city and prevent it. And so for me, I think what has worked in other cities that I think is extremely promising is something called master leasing, where either your housing authority or a nonprofit we would create would start to master lease. In essence, negotiate leases in mass. And we'd be able to pass that reduced rent and hold it flat for years to our own residents. We know 2 things about that. One, it allows us to rehouse people who are unhoused today, and over 40% are estimated to have jobs, so we know that will help us. But it also allows hardworking families to not lose their homes and prevent homelessness, because in that instance, the master lease signer gets a phone call before someone's evicted, and we start to get ahead of the challenge we face today.